will be used everywhere where flow is relevant.
Okay, same logic is what I'm guessing. Yeah,
Yes.
okay, understood. Thank you, understood. And I have an unrelated question on the exception table for fragments and table entry creation, but I can hold on.
So, hey, Andy, and just as you made a comment about this flag, to say that, should we not have some variable which basically says how many bits are valid, as opposed to saying that, okay, whether it's V4 or V6?
So I didn't, if you're wondering, for example, in the flow tracking table, that if you have 120-bit source address, 120-bit dest address, and it might be a V4 or V6 address, and if it's an exact match field, like it is for the flow tracking table, then yeah, you need either to say, okay, we're actually going to do LPM or ternary on that, or we're going to say that the P4 program has to initialize the least, like the 96 n-bits used for V4 address to a known value like all zeros. So you can do exact match. This is nitpicky level details that I'm talking about here, but if that's what you're asking about, then that's what that's one possibility.
Yeah, I mean, although my use case was only on the LPM, let's start with, right? So, irrespective of that, right, when we are basically constructing the key, do we not need to really say that how many bits are valid?
For when you install prefixes, yeah, you have to say what the prefix length is, and it better not be longer than 32 for a V4 address.
Exactly. Okay.
So don't do that.
Okay. Thanks, Andy.
But for exact match fields, there is this issue that you'll need to we'll probably want to say zero out all the 96 bits that don't matter for V4 address.
Yeah. Okay.
But here we are talking about the LPM lookup, not the connection tracking, right? Not the flow table.
Yeah, for this routing scenario, for the IPv6 routing, outbound routing, yes, it's LPM, not the connection.
Right, right.
This is not the connection tracking.
Okay. So can we consider this kind of closed and talked about and agreed?
Yes, for that comment, yes, you can say that we can move on from here, and then
we can move on from here. Okay, great. Everyone's nodding their heads. No, I can't see that. And someone else said they had something they wanted to bring up. Was it Venkat?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Maybe question for Andy, the P4
Okay.
expert. So, and then for the connection tracking, for the fragments, right? The existing design, existing, write up somewhere in the documentation says we will be creating another table and we'll create entries and use that table as a way to make sure that the fragments all add up to right. That seems to be the design. That means that one table might create a trigger a entry creation in another table. Or do you see it as you just, you have two separate tables, both of them generate their outputs and you have extra logic on top later. So I'm contrasting between the P4's match action tables versus a generic field in, field out lookup tables, and later you could combine the output of two tables into into some logic.
I want to make sure I'm interpreting your question right. Are you asking what's a good way in P4 to represent the idea for how to do fragment handling?
Let me rephrase then. That's like I just do my job. Right. But so let me rephrase. So today we don't have one table triggering a table entry creation in another table in P4.
Not today.
So that means that you could have a regular connection tracking table and there could be another fragment tracking table.
Yes, there
right?
could be. I like that idea. That seems workable to me, to have a separate fragment tracking table.
Yeah, so that means I have a little bit of bias in my head, right, on how NPL designs where there's a lookup tables where there are no actions. It's more of a field in, field out, and then a disaggregated action that you could do it a little later, separation of tables and logic, right? And whereas if you just do the logic in the table, it has its own things, and you don't want to go into that sidetrack. But I'm thinking if I have to go with P4 and implement two tables, so first connection tracking table produces some results, and the second fragment tracking table produces another result. And I look at both the results together in another separate logic and do what needs to happen.
So, I mean, and here's a thought that I have that I don't know if this fits in with the whole Dash data plane model, but imagine that you had a P4 table that was the fragment tracking one first, and its whole job was to be add on miss for the first fragment, and the later fragments tell you what the L4 ports were for the first fragment. And then now those L4 ports are carried down to the connection tracking table, and you look at it there with the ports.
And then there are interconnections, right? We said if the flow ends, then you need to take the statistics, add it to the other table, and there are complications there. That's why.
Okay, so this I'm sorry, I was unaware of those complications, and the idea I've just presented may or may not be able to work for that.
So
sorry.
I can explain, right? So if you have a connection, and then in between one of the packet got fragmented into 4 fragments. Mm-hmm. And those 4 fragments are tracked in another fragment table, and the statistics are there, and mm-hmm. they need to somehow come in and update the flow table later, right? When the connection.
Sorry, go ahead.
So when the fragment flow, if you allow me to phrase it that way, when the fragment flow ends, mm-hmm. we need to connect that to the flow table the connection table that comes later. And that might mean
I can expand on my idea.
We need to look at, I mean, I'm just thinking, do we need to look at one table enabling entry creation in another table or not? So, and then what is the current?
So let me expand on if there were a fragment tracking table first that just, you add on miss on the first fragment, and then you later fragments just pick up what the L4 ports are. You're still going to later do the connection tracking table lookup, and you can do full statistics on every fragment live as the fragment's arriving without waiting to combine the results later, I think, right? There's no reason to combine statistics from 2 tables ever. They're always in the flow tracking table then.
The flow tracking table.
If you update the flow tracking table live on every fragment with the packet and byte counts you want, then it's done. No need to combine it from somewhere else later.
The fragment table passes those additional ports so that the connection table has the ports, right? Because the fragment
connection table already knows the ports because the fragment you've already resolved it before you get to the connection tracking table.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
So I don't know if that answers all the questions, but
I was trying to see, do we need to go back? I mean, I was just trying to evaluate, is there a need for one table? Yeah, I think I got enough answers to work on it. I don't mean to dump all my work onto you for the design part. Okay, understood. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, happy to brainstorm more offline if you want.
Yeah, definitely.
I always go for solutions that require less general capabilities in the language and libraries when possible.
Yeah, so yeah, I was trying to kind of maybe combine too many things in my head. One was when the same flow is tracked by multiple people, like in shortcut switches, the routing and the switching or the cache in front track the flow separately, and we used to combine them with NetFlow data export version 7. And so I was kind of over engineering and trying to see, do I have to do that? That was one. Second is, I think I might be overlaying too much of my NPL and NPL way of designing things and trying to see. Yeah.
Please ask. Good ideas might come out of it.
Yep.
Great. Now, does it sound like we're pretty much waiting on connection tracking then for a couple of the other work items? Is that our dependency, number 11 here?
Yeah.
I hear a funny noise. Okay. Yep.
Keshav, connection rate limiting feature, I think that depend on connection tracking implementation.
So should we focus on getting this piece done first then, since we have dependencies?
I don't think it's this piece. It's even one before that, connection tracking in the simulator number 14, which will happen in like 2 weeks.
Okie dokie. Connection track. And I did have a date written down for that, didn't I? I have May 5th. Should we bump that date out, Marian?
Yes, so this week we will have the one that is after that, number 15, right? Is it?
Translation, runtime.
Yeah,
modes.
number 15 is this week, and connection tracking in simulator is 2 weeks from now.
Okay. All right.
Actually, I have a couple of questions regarding to the connection rate limiting part. I have put in the issues where we noted down whether.
Keshav, do you have a GitHub ID that I can add?
My GitHub ID, Keshu Gupta 1 is my GitHub ID.
What?
Keshu Gupta 1.
Okay, thank you. Oh, here it is. Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Go ahead with your.
Yeah. So my this connection rate limiting is what we discussed last time. Like we can implement by whenever there is a miss in the connection tracking table, then we do implement by metering. So there were questions last time whether metering is okay for the rate limiting part. That was the first thing. So Andy, it was question to Andy like whether metering is okay for this kind of scenario. And one more thing I have question is like when two packets comes for the same flow when then the flow doesn't exist in the connection tracking table. So for in that case, the first packet will be always miss and the second will be like hit, or that could be case like for both could be a miss. Then I think here connection limiting will behave differently then.
Yeah, I think Mario mentioned some ideas, some questions on that metering idea earlier, and you're right, it might not account correctly for some of these cases. And I don't have, unless that can be solved some way, which I don't have a solution for, then it does sound like we might want some kind of thing built into the add-on miss table to do rate limiting inside of it somehow. But unless somebody else has thought of a solution that avoids the correct account, I think if I remember correctly, Mario, you said if you do a meter, then yeah, if we do a meter before the add-on miss table to tend to prevent the add-on miss, it's going to be counting packets differently than, yeah, I've forgotten the details, but it sounded like something that basically they need to be tied together if you want accurate rate limiting. Is my recollection.
Yeah, I forgot. So basically, you need to count the misses, not the packets in general.
You only want to update the token counts if you actually added an entry successfully.
Right. Right. Exactly. Not even just the misses, the adding of the entry. Yeah.
And I didn't. I mean, you can imagine increasing the feedback loop a little bit by saying, do the add-on miss first.
So I was thinking like it can be do like if add-on miss, we have a miss, then we go and implement indirect metering in this case. Then with the indirect metering, we'll go to the metering index and increase.
Yeah, but in a way, you also want to, when you know that you want to add the table,
I mean, the overall goal of the functional requirements or desire here is for ENI, we want to specify some like rate limit, like 1 million per second or 500,000 ads per second kind of thing, roughly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Functional requirement is how many connections per second we are this ENI is allowed to open.
Right. And it doesn't need to be hyper precise, like 500,000 plus or minus 1. It could be 500,000 plus or minus 1% or something like that. But that's what any implementation is actually going to give you. But we probably don't want it to be 500,000 plus or minus 50%. That's way too far off.
Yes, usually it's plus some deviation.
Yeah, but we want a few percent maximum deviation from the specified number, not
But
total
in behavioral model, I think it should be, if we really want to express that, it could be quite literal, like plus or minus 1.
Yeah. Sorry, I haven't thought about it much since last time, and I don't have an answer. If there's an answer using meters, I haven't come up with one, and nor have I proved it can't be done, but I don't know a way to do it yet.
Okay. So do you think, is this question answered to your satisfaction? Is it Venkat?
Keshav here.
Keshav, I'm sorry, Keshav, yeah.
So if I understood, meter right now we are not sure if we can go by meter, Andy, to do the rate limiting part.
I'm not sure it can be done. Maybe it can, but not in a way I've noticed or somebody's told me about.
Is that a question for the P4 meeting on Mondays, or?
We could certainly discuss it. I know there was also discussion on this of whether the reference model actually needs to, do we think the reference model should accurately let you specify these add and miss and enforce them in the reference model? Or can that be a...
Keshav, do you want to join that meeting Monday to ask the question, or?
Actually, that meeting happens midnight. I'm from India, and that meeting happens midnight.
Maybe somebody could proxy for Keshav then, maybe. Or I could try and go and try and proxy the question.
Yeah, Christine, I think I will be there for the general add-on miss stuff.
Okay. So you can bring it forth. Thank you. Thanks. Now, how about this section down here? Let's see. So did we cover this then, based on the what we just talked about?
I think those are basically detailed reasons why I don't know how to solve it with meters.
Okay. All right, Keshav, I'm going to update yours there. Okay. Okay. All right. And so let's see. I know that Kasim was working on this one here, the support for list match type. So is he left on here? I don't see him, but he was asking some good questions and got answers from Marian with respect to his work item. And so anyone else have questions with respect to their work item?
In general, how do we test the behavioral model? We seem to be checking in code by compiling it. I'm okay to do that, but is there any plan to at least add one?
That's a good question for Marian, because I am not a developer.
Yeah, so two things about that. First one, this week we will have the infrastructure to be able to program the software switch, and we can actually add the test. That's what we discussed on Wednesday. And we will probably, I don't know, maybe Keysight is going to define some test vectors for that, but also what Chris proposed, and I think we should follow up on that in a couple of weeks, is to add some automated pipelines into GitHub, so that every time we check in anything, we hit the automatic verifications. So this is what Chris mentioned, and I think we can revisit that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think the timing's good. We already started internal discussions. The people above my pay grade who make resource choices are out this week. But in principle, I'd like to contribute in that area.
Okay. And so I'm wondering too, if anyone wants to communicate something larger, like, you know, I believe my work item is finished and we'd like to test or something like that. I wonder if we could send an email to sonic-dash@googlegroups.com. That's what we use to manage all these notes and communicate with each other, because everyone is a member here. Would that work for you guys? If you, rather than the GitHub notifications? Because some of those get filtered. I guess what I'm saying is, if you feel like you're done or you have a question, or if you want to test, maybe send it to this DL here.
Yep.
Is that a
That
yes?
Yep, I
Okay.
think that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, great. Great. And Marian, unless you or I or Chris has anything else, or you guys on the phone, I guess we could give a little bit of time back. I only scheduled this for 45 minutes. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, all right. I appreciate you guys and appreciate your time, and thank you for everything. And sounds like after next week, we might be able to move forward as well. So thank you. And I did record this meeting, or I attempted to, so I'll post it.
Thanks, Christina, for running the meeting.
Oh yeah, no problem. You know, it's always fun to hang out with the big thinkers. That's you guys. Get deep in the weeds of connection tracking. It's like so much
This is
fun.
serious P4 sausage making.